My name is Paige Eisner. I'm 34 years old. Stop being dramatic. Brooke's engagement party has 50 guests waiting, my mother said over the phone while I was hemorrhaging alone in an ER at 11 p.m. That was the last time I spoke to either of my parents. 8 years ago. I lost my baby that night, and I lost my family the same night. Not because of the miscarriage, but because of a choice they made. A choice I still can't unhear. What I didn't know was that someone in that family never actually left. For 8 years he was there, in the back row of every graduation, behind every anonymous gift, inside every envelope I thought came from a scholarship fund. I just didn't know. Not until a 6-year-old girl showed up on my doorstep last Christmas Eve holding a handmade photo album. Before I go on, if this story resonates with you, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with it. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Now let me take you back to the winter of 2017, the night everything shattered. I need you to understand something first. Before the hospital, before the silence, before all of it. I was 26, working night shifts at a county hospital outside of Hartford. I'd just finished my RN program, top of my cohort, 3 job offers on the table. The day I got my nursing pin, I called my mother. She picked up on the 4th ring. "Mom, I did it. I graduated." There was a pause. Then, "Oh, that's nice, honey. Listen, can you switch your shift on Saturday? Brooke needs someone to drive her to her final dress fitting, and I have my book club." I said, "Sure, Mom. I'll figure out my shift." That was the pattern. That was always the pattern. My sister Brooke was 4 years older, and in my mother's universe, she was the son. Linda Eisner, that's my mother, posted Brooke's photos on Facebook like a campaign manager. Brooke's engagement, Brooke's new house, Brooke's hair appointment. Every caption read the same. My pride and joy. I don't think I ever appeared on her page. Not once. My father, Richard, was a quiet man, an accountant who came home at 5:30, ate dinner at 6, and disappeared into the garage to listen to baseball on a portable radio. When my mother talked over me at the dinner table, he'd look at me from across the mashed potatoes with this expression, like he was trying to apologize with his eyes. But he never opened his mouth, not once. I used to think being the quiet one meant being the strong one. That if I just kept my head down and worked harder, eventually they'd see me. I was wrong about that. That fall, I found out I was pregnant. 10 weeks. I did the math sitting on my bathroom floor at 2 in the morning, still in scrubs, a plastic test balanced on my knee. The father, his name doesn't matter for this story, had left 3 weeks earlier. Packed a bag while I was on a double shift, texted me the word sorry, and blocked my number. I didn't even get a conversation. So there I was, 26, alone, pregnant, and I decided to keep the baby. I wasn't naive. I knew it would be hard, but I also knew I could do hard. I'd been doing hard my entire life. The first person I called was my mother. "Mom, I need to tell you something. I'm pregnant." Silence. Not the warm kind. The calculating kind. "Are you sure this is the right time? Brooke's wedding is in 3 months, and I don't want anything overshadowing it." I held the phone away from my face, stared at the ceiling. "I understand," I said. My mother didn't ask how far along I was, didn't ask how I was feeling, didn't ask about the father. She asked about Brooke's wedding timeline, and then she hung up. The only person who called me back that week was my Aunt Helen, my father's younger sister. She lived 2 towns over. She wasn't loud or dramatic. She just said, "Paige, honey, congratulations, I mean that. You're going to be a wonderful mother." I cried for 20 minutes after we hung up. I should have known then. The signs were all there, who showed up and who didn't. But I kept hoping. I kept waiting for my mother to call back and say something different. She never did. 14 weeks in it happened. I was home after a 10-hour shift, heating soup on the stove. Then, a knife of pain, low and sharp, doubling me over the counter. I grabbed my keys, drove myself to the ER, and by the time I stumbled through the sliding doors, there was blood soaking through my scrub pants. Ruptured ectopic pregnancy. Emergency surgery. That's what the doctor told me in a voice that was calm, the way doctors are calm when the situation is not calm at all. We need to operate now, Paige. Is there someone we can call? I called my mother. It was 11 p.m. on a Saturday. I could hear music in the background, laughter, glasses clinking. Mom, I'm in the ER. They're taking me to surgery. I'm scared. Can you come? She sighed. Actually sighed. Paige, I can't just leave. There are 50 people here. You'll be fine. The doctors know what they're doing. Don't be dramatic. Then I heard it. In the background. My sister's voice. Sharp, annoyed. Who is it? Tell her we're busy. My mother lowered her voice, like she was shielding the party from the inconvenience of me. I'll call you tomorrow, okay? Get some rest. She hung up. I went into surgery alone. A nurse whose name I'll never forget, Karen, a woman I barely knew, held my hand while they put me under. She said, "You're not alone, sweetheart. I'm right here." A stranger said the words my mother wouldn't. I woke up in recovery. The baby was gone. The room was empty. No flowers, no family, no one sitting in the chair by the window. Not that night. Not the next day. Not ever. 3 days later, I was still in the hospital when my phone rang. It was Linda. She didn't ask how the surgery went. Didn't ask if I was recovering. Her first sentence, the very first thing she said, was this. I hope you're not going to use this to guilt trip anyone. The party went beautifully, by the way. I held the phone against my ear and let the words settle. Paige, are you there? I'm here, I said. And that was the last thing I said to my mother for 8 years. I hung up. Changed my phone number that afternoon. The hospital had a social worker who helped me. Deactivated my Facebook, filed the transfer paperwork to a community clinic 4 hours south, in a town where nobody knew my last name. Within 2 weeks, I was gone. My mother called my old number. Nothing. She called Aunt Helen and screamed, "Your niece is being selfish. She's punishing me for one phone call." One phone call. That's what she reduced it to. One phone call. While her daughter hemorrhaged on a gurney and lost a child and woke up to a ceiling she didn't recognize and a silence that swallowed her whole. I didn't leave to punish anyone. I need you to understand that. I left because staying would have killed me. Not my body, but everything inside me that still wanted to believe I mattered to them. And if I stayed, I would have spent the rest of my life reaching for a hand that was never going to reach back. So I stopped reaching. And that should have been the end of the story. Except someone in my family didn't accept the ending. 2 years after I disappeared, a letter arrived. Not email, not a text, an actual letter, handwritten on lavender stationery, from Aunt Helen. She'd tracked down my new address through a mutual friend at the hospital where I used to work. I almost threw it away. I was done with the Eisner family and everything it contained. But I knew Helen. She was the only one who'd called to say congratulations. So I opened it. The first paragraph was warm. She hoped I was doing well. She missed me. She was proud of me. The second paragraph made my hands shake. Your mother has been telling people you left because of a mental health crisis. She wrote a letter to Pastor Thomas at Grace Community Church. She told him you'd been diagnosed with a severe personality disorder. She said you were a danger to yourself and that you disappeared in the middle of the night without explanation. I read it twice to make sure I wasn't imagining it. Linda hadn't just let me go. She'd rewritten the story. She'd turned my survival into her tragedy. Helen wrote that Linda now hosted monthly family dinners, invited all the aunts, uncles, cousins, and at each one, she'd pause before the meal and ask everyone to bow their heads for Paige, a full minute of prayer, for me, the daughter who hadn't been diagnosed with anything, the daughter who left because her mother chose a party over her life. Everyone believes her, Helen wrote. She's very convincing. At the bottom of the letter, one more line, almost a footnote, easy to miss. Your father asked me to keep the original letter your mother sent to Pastor Thomas, just in case. I didn't understand what that meant. Not yet. I kept going. That's the thing nobody tells you about cutting off your family. The world doesn't stop. Your alarm still rings at 5 a.m. Your patients still need you. The rent doesn't care that you cried in the shower for 40 minutes. So I worked. I studied. I applied to a nurse practitioner program at the state university and got in on the first try. For 2.5 years, I worked full-time and went to school full-time. I drank more coffee than water. I slept in the break room between shifts. I told no one about my family because there was nothing to tell. They didn't exist in my new life. The day I graduated, walked across that stage, Master of Science in Nursing, Nurse Practitioner Certification, I looked out at the audience. Rows and rows of families. Mothers crying, fathers holding flowers, siblings waving phones. My row was empty. I'd told myself it didn't matter, that the degree was for me, not for an audience. And that was true. But it was also true that I scanned every row, back to front, looking for a face I recognized. I didn't find one. I smiled, shook the dean's hand, and told myself, this is enough. I got a job at a community health clinic, treating uninsured patients, running the women's health program. My coworkers became my people. I bought a small apartment, put a plant on the windowsill, adopted a cat named Olive. Every Christmas, I signed up for the overnight shift, 12 hours. It was easier than sitting alone in my apartment, listening to other people's celebrations through the walls. I built a life I'm proud of, but there are nights, especially in December, when the silence in my apartment feels louder than anything. What I didn't know was that at my graduation, someone was sitting in the very last row. I wouldn't find out for another 6 years. Fast forward, Christmas Eve, this past year. I'm 34. I live in a small Connecticut town where the main street has a bakery, a hardware store, and a church with a bell that rings on the hour. My apartment is on the second floor of an old Victorian, creaky stairs, drafty windows, but the light in the morning is beautiful. I just finished a 10-hour shift at the clinic. Flu season. Every room full. I came home, peeled off my jacket, and poured myself a glass of wine I'd been thinking about since noon. My Christmas tree was small, 3 feet, tabletop, pre-lit. I'd hung exactly 7 ornaments. Olive the cat was asleep underneath it. Snow was falling outside, soft, the kind that makes everything quieter. My phone buzzed. Aunt Helen. Merry Christmas, sweetheart. I have something I need to tell you, but it has to be in person. Can I stop by tonight? I stared at the message. Helen had respected my space for years. She sent birthday cards, the occasional letter. We spoke on the phone every few months, short, warm conversations. She never pushed. She never mentioned my parents unless I asked. For her to want to come in person on Christmas Eve, something was different. Of course, come whenever you're ready. I put the kettle on, straightened the pillows, tried to ignore the knot forming at the base of my throat. At 7 p.m., the doorbell rang. I walked to the door, turned the handle, and looked out. But it wasn't Aunt Helen standing there. I looked down and saw a pair of brown eyes I had never met staring up at me. A little girl, maybe 5 or 6, dark blonde hair tangled from the wind, holding a book pressed against her chest like it was the most important thing in the world. The girl looked up at me. Snow dusted her eyelashes. Are you Aunt Paige? I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. No one had called me aunt in 8 years. No one in my family had called me anything in 8 years. Are you Aunt Paige? She asked again, smaller this time, like she was afraid she had the wrong door. Yes, I'm Paige. She held out the book. Grandpa said to give this to you. He said you'd know what it means. My hands took it before my brain caught up. It was heavy, leather-bound, cracked at the spine, held together with a rubber band. On the cover, in shaky handwriting I recognized instantly, my father's. 3 words. For Paige, everything. Behind the girl, a car door opened. Aunt Helen stepped out, wrapped in a wool coat, her face red from crying, or cold, or both. She walked up the steps slowly. She looked 10 years older than the last time I'd seen her. Her name is Lily, Helen said. She's Brooke's daughter, your niece. The air left my lungs. And before you say anything, your father made that. She pointed to the album in my hands. All of it. Every page. He asked me to bring her tonight because... Helen's voice broke. She pressed her fist to her mouth, steadied herself. He's not well, Paige. He's in the hospital. His heart. I looked at Lily. She had Brooke's chin, Brooke's small ears, but her smile, shy, a little crooked, waiting for permission. That was Richard's smile. My father's smile, standing on my doorstep on Christmas Eve. "Come inside," I said. "Both of you, come inside." I sat on the floor, the album on my lap, and opened the first page. The first photograph was blurry, taken from too far away, slightly crooked, the kind of picture someone takes when they don't want to be seen taking it. A graduation stage, navy and gold banners, a woman in a cap and gown shaking a hand at a podium. Me, my NP graduation, 2 years ago. I looked closer. The photo was taken from the back of the auditorium, the very last row. I could see the curve of empty seats around whoever was holding the camera. My father had been there. I turned the page. A photo of me standing outside the clinic, laughing with my coworker Maria, coffee in hand, taken from across the street. Through a car window, I think. There was a faint reflection in the corner. Next page, a bank transfer receipt, $200, sent monthly for 48 months. From the account of Helen Eisner, but in pencil, in my father's hand, a note in the margin. From Dad. My throat closed. Those payments. I'd received them through a financial aid office. I thought they were part of a loan repayment assistance program for rural healthcare workers. I'd even written a thank you letter to the program administrator. That money, every single dollar, came from my father. I turned another page. Christmas cards, 5 of them, 1 for each year, handwritten, unsigned, unmailed. Every single one began the same way. "Dear Paige, I'm sorry I'm not brave enough to send this. The last photo in that section, me, outside the mobile clinic van, handing a flu shot to an elderly woman, and in the far background, barely visible, standing near a parked truck in a winter coat, a man, alone, watching. My father." I closed the album, put my hand over my mouth, and broke. Helen sat across from me on the floor. Lily had fallen asleep on the couch, curled around a throw pillow like a question mark. "Why?" I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. "Why didn't he just call me?" Helen looked at her hands. "Your mother controls everything, the bank accounts, the car, the house title. He could have called. She checks his phone every night, every message. He could have left. She told him if he contacted you, she'd make sure Brooke cut off access to Lily. He lives for that little girl, Paige. She's the only piece of his life that still has light in it." I wiped my face with my sleeve. "So he chose silence." Helen leaned forward. "He chose the only rebellion he could. Every photo in that album, taken on days he told your mother he was going to Home Depot, every dollar, sent from my account so it wouldn't show on their statements. Every card, written at my kitchen table at 6 a.m. before your mother woke up." I looked at the sleeping child on my sofa, my niece, a person who existed in the world and had my blood in her veins, and I hadn't known her name until 10 minutes ago. "Does my mother know where I live?" Helen hesitated. "I accidentally mentioned your town once, 2 years ago. She said—" Helen stopped. "Tell me." "She said, good, let her rot in that little town. At least she's not here embarrassing us." The words landed exactly where they were meant to, but they didn't break me. Not anymore. I'd spent 8 years building a spine that my mother didn't have the blueprints for. "Helen, is there something else in this album?" She looked at me. "Turn to the last page." I know this is getting heavy. If you're watching and this hits close to home, if you've ever felt invisible to the people who were supposed to love you the most, drop a comment. I see you, Paige. Or if you'd handle this differently, tell me what you'd do. Like this video if you want to see what happens next. Now, the last page of that album. I turned to the last page. It was a photocopy. Slightly grainy, as if someone had pressed the original against a library scanner. A letter, typed, on Grace Community Church stationery, dated 6 years ago. I recognized my mother's phrasing before I finished the first line. Nobody else talked like that. The careful, manicured sentences designed to sound concerned while burying a knife. "Dear Pastor Thomas, I am writing to you with a heavy heart about my youngest daughter, Paige. As you may know, she left our family suddenly and without explanation. What I haven't shared publicly is that Paige has been diagnosed with a severe personality disorder. She has become a danger to herself and has refused all treatment. We are devastated. I read it twice. 3 times. None of it was true. Not one word. I had never been diagnosed with anything. I had never refused treatment for anything. I left because my mother told me to stop being dramatic while I was losing my baby. And she had put it in writing, sent it to a pastor, let it circulate through a congregation of people who knew my name. How did Dad get this? My voice was flat. Pastor Thomas gave him a copy, Helen said quietly. He kept the original in his office. He told your father it didn't sit right, that a mother who writes a letter like that but never once asks the church to visit her daughter or offer help, something didn't add up. Why didn't Dad use this sooner? Helen looked at the sleeping girl, then back at me. He was afraid of losing everything, but 2 months ago they found a blockage in his heart. He's scheduled for surgery on the 26th, and he told me, if I don't make it, at least let Paige know she was never forgotten. And then Helen said something that changed everything. Your mother organized the Christmas Eve service at Grace Community this year. I looked at Helen. She what? She's giving a speech, tonight, about family, forgiveness, and… Helen paused, choosing her words carefully. The pain of losing a child who chose to leave. I almost laughed. Almost, but the sound that came out of my throat wasn't laughter. It was something older and sharper. She's performing, I said. In a church. On Christmas Eve. She's been rehearsing for a week. The whole congregation will be there. 60, maybe 70 people. The same people who got that letter. The same people who pray for you every month like you're some cautionary tale. I stood up, walked to the window. Outside, the snow was falling harder. The street lamp threw a cone of yellow light across the sidewalk. Somewhere down the block, I could hear carolers. I looked at Lily on the sofa, at the album on the floor, open to the page with the Christmas cards my father had written and never sent, at the photo of him standing alone in the snow outside my clinic, watching me through a window like a man visiting a grave. I'm not going there to fight her, I said. Helen nodded. No one's asking you to fight. Then what are you asking? She stood, walked over to me, put her hand on my shoulder, gently, the way you touch someone who might shatter. If you don't go, her version of the story is the only one that survives, and your father, lying in that hospital bed, he'll know he spent 8 years building that album for nothing. I looked at the album again. Then I looked at my phone. Then I did something I hadn't done in 8 years. The phone rang twice before he answered. Grace Community Church, this is Pastor Thomas. Pastor Thomas, this is Paige Eisner. A long pause. Not uncomfortable. More like the pause of a man who'd been waiting for a phone call he wasn't sure would ever come. Paige. His voice softened. I've been hoping to hear from you. You have? I've been waiting for this call for 6 years, if I'm being honest. I kept that letter your mother sent because it didn't sit right with me. A mother who writes that about her daughter but never once asks me to visit you. Never asks the church to reach out. Never provides a doctor's name or a treatment center. She just wanted people to know her version. My chest tightened, not from pain, from something that felt dangerously close to being believed. I'm not asking you to take sides, Pastor. I'm not taking sides. I'm standing with the truth. There's a difference. I pressed my forehead against the cold window glass. Can I come to the service tonight? You're always welcome in God's house, Paige. You always have been. I didn't lay out a strategy. I didn't plan an ambush. I want you to understand that clearly. I wasn't going to that church to humiliate my mother or create a spectacle. I was going because for 8 years, a woman had stood at a podium in front of people I grew up with and told them I was broken. And I was going to walk in, whole, standing, breathing, and let my presence be the answer. Helen would take Lily home. She didn't want the child there for what might happen. I agreed. I would go alone. I pulled on my coat, the same navy pea coat I'd worn to work that morning, still smelling like antiseptic and coffee, and drove to Grace Community Church. The parking lot was full. I sat in my car for 3 minutes, engine off, watching people file through the front doors of Grace Community. Families in Christmas sweaters, children carrying candles, an older couple holding hands. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that the woman who organized this evening had spent 6 years lying to all of them about her own daughter. I got out. The air hit my face, sharp, clean, below freezing. My scrubs were still under my coat. I hadn't had time to change. I looked like what I was, a woman who'd just come from work. I walked in through the side entrance. The sanctuary was warm, candles lined every windowsill. A small orchestra was playing O Holy Night near the altar. The pews were packed, 60, maybe 70 people, just like Helen had said. I found a seat in the last row, the very last pew, against the back wall, the same row my father had sat in at my graduation. I kept my head down, folded my hands, tried to breathe. Up front, in the first pew, there she was, my mother, Linda Eisner, 62 years old, silver blonde hair freshly styled, wearing a red silk blouse that probably cost more than my electric bill. She was laughing with the woman next to her, touching her arm the way she always did when she wanted someone to feel special. Beside her, Brooke, 38, blonde, rigid posture, checking her phone. And next to Brooke, a man I didn't recognize. Tall, dark hair, jaw tight. Derek, Brooke's husband. He sat very still, staring at the program in his hands like he was reading something in a language he didn't speak. Then Brooke looked up, turned her head toward the back of the church. And our eyes met. The color drained from her face. Brooke grabbed Derek's arm. I saw her whisper something. He didn't react. She whispered again, more urgently. He still didn't turn around. Then the music faded, and Pastor Thomas stepped to the podium. "Before we continue with our program," he said, "I'd like to invite Linda Eisner to share a few words. Linda has been a pillar of this congregation for many years, and she's prepared something special for us tonight." Applause. Warm, genuine, trusting applause from people who brought casseroles to Linda's house and believed every word she'd ever told them. My mother stood, smoothed her blouse, walked to the podium with the practiced grace of a woman who had rehearsed this in front of a mirror. "Thank you, Pastor." She smiled, that wide, trembling smile she used when she wanted people to see courage through pain. Christmas is about family, about forgiveness, about never giving up on the people you love. She paused, looked out at the audience. Her eyes glistened. "Some of you know that my youngest daughter has been away for many years." Her voice cracked, perfectly timed. "Not a day goes by that I don't pray for her to come home. I left the door open. I never stopped reaching out. But sometimes," she pressed her hand to her chest, "sometimes the people we love choose to walk away, and all we can do is wait." A woman in the third row wiped her eyes. An older man shook his head sympathetically. Someone murmured, "We're praying with you, Linda." I sat in the back row and listened to my mother describe a world that didn't exist, a world where she had reached out, where she had left the door open, where she had done anything at all except hang up the phone while her daughter bled. My hand tightened around the strap of my bag. Brooke stared at the floor. Linda finished to applause. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue. She'd brought one, tucked into her sleeve, pre-folded. Even the tears were staged. She stepped down from the podium, and Pastor Thomas thanked her. People reached out to touch her arm as she walked back to her seat. She accepted each one like communion. Then she turned toward the back of the church. Maybe she felt it. Maybe someone's gaze had shifted. Maybe the air changed. She saw me. Her smile froze. Not faded, froze, like a frame caught mid-projection. Her right foot paused in the aisle. Her hand, still raised from accepting someone's sympathy, hung in the air. 3 seconds. That's how long it lasted. 3 seconds of my mother's real face, the one beneath the performance. Then the mask slid back on. "Oh my God!" Her voice carried across the sanctuary. She pressed both hands to her mouth. "Paige? Is that you?" She began walking toward me, arms opening wide, tears already flowing. "My baby came home. On Christmas Eve, my baby came home." People gasped. A few clapped. An elderly woman clasped her hands together like she was witnessing a miracle. Linda moved down the aisle with her arms wide open, sobbing, performing the reunion she'd rehearsed for an audience she'd already primed. I stood up. I didn't step forward. I didn't step back. Hello, Mom. She reached me, wrapped her arms around me, pulled me tight. I didn't hug her back. My arms stayed at my sides. She pressed her mouth to my ear, her voice dropping to a whisper that no one else could hear. Every ounce of warmth vanished. Don't you dare make a scene. Smile. Now. She said it like a command. The same voice she'd used my entire life. But this time, I didn't obey. I stepped back. One step, just enough to break her grip. I didn't come here for a reunion, Mom. My voice wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was the voice I use when I'm telling a patient something they don't want to hear. Steady, clear, kind enough to be decent, firm enough to be unmistakable. Linda's eyes flickered. She glanced sideways at the congregation, calculated, then smiled wider. Paige, sweetheart, we can talk about this at home, not here. You chose here to tell your story. I think here is fair. Someone in the third row shifted in their seat. The murmuring started, low, uncertain, like the first drops of rain before a storm you're not sure is coming. Linda turned toward Brooke, a quick, sharp look, the kind that said, handle this. Brooke stood, walked toward us with the careful posture of a woman who'd learned from the master. Paige, this isn't the time or place. Mom has been devastated. Has she? I said. Or has she been rehearsing? Brooke blinked, opened her mouth, closed it. The murmuring grew louder, heads turned. People who'd been reaching for their hymnals were now watching the aisle. Linda drew herself up. Her chin lifted. Her voice rose, not to a shout, but to the precise volume needed to reach every ear in the room. See? This is what I was talking about. She comes here to attack me, in God's house, on Christmas Eve. She looked at the congregation, palms open, eyes wide. The wronged mother, the eternal victim. You all saw. I opened my arms to her. A few people nodded. But not all of them. Some were watching me now. Watching and waiting. That's when I reached into my bag. Okay. Pause. I need to ask you something. What would you do right now? Would you walk away and let Linda keep her story forever? Or would you stay and let the truth speak? Comment, walk away, or stay. I want to know. And if you haven't subscribed yet, this is the moment. Because what happens next is the part I've waited 8 years to tell. Now, back to the church. I pulled out the album, set it on the back of the pew in front of me. I didn't raise it in the air. I didn't slam it down. I just held it, leather-bound, cracked at the spine, with my father's handwriting on the cover. I didn't come to attack you, Mom. I kept my voice even, conversational, like I was telling her the weather. I came because Dad asked me to. Linda's face shifted. Something behind her eyes recalculated. Your father? What are you talking about? Did you know he was at my graduation? Back row, right about where I'm standing now. I opened the album to the first page and turned it so the people nearest to me could see. The grainy photo of the auditorium, the empty seats, the lone figure holding a phone camera. Did you know he sent money every month so I could finish school? Did you know he wrote me a Christmas card every single year and never mailed them because he was afraid of you? Silence, not the comfortable silence of a church at rest. The heavy, airless silence of a room full of people realizing they might have been lied to. That's ridiculous, Linda said. Her voice was still controlled, but her jaw was tight. Your father agrees with me completely. He always has. Dad is in the hospital right now. Heart surgery on the 26th. I closed the album gently. He made this album, every photo, every receipt, every unsent card, because he didn't know if he'd get another chance to tell me the truth. A murmur rippled through the pews. The woman who had wiped her tears during Linda's speech was now staring at my mother with an entirely different expression. Nobody was clapping anymore. I opened the album to the last page, held it steady. This is a letter you wrote, Mom, 6 years ago, to Pastor Thomas. Linda went pale, not pink, not flushed, white. The kind of white that starts at the lips and spreads outward. I read it aloud. I didn't shout. I read it the way I read lab results to patients, clearly, without drama, because the facts don't need volume. You told Pastor Thomas I'd been diagnosed with a severe personality disorder. You said I was a danger to myself. You said I left in the middle of the night without explanation. I lowered the album, looked at her. None of that is true. I left because you told me to stop being dramatic while I was losing my baby in an emergency room. And then you hung up. 60 people heard it. The gasp was not dramatic. It was small and scattered. The sound of a dozen people inhaling at once, a sound like wind catching a door. An older woman in the fourth row pressed her hand to her mouth. A man near the aisle shook his head slowly. Pastor Thomas stood. He didn't rush. He walked to the center of the aisle with the measured calm of a man who had been carrying a weight for 6 years and was finally allowed to set it down. I can confirm I received that letter, he said. I kept the original because something about it didn't feel right to me. I have it in my office. Linda spun toward him. Thomas, how dare you? I'm not taking anyone's side, Linda. I'm confirming a fact. Brooke shot to her feet. Paige, you're being manipulative. Mom was just trying to protect our family. And then a voice no one expected spoke from the first row. Derek. Sit down, Brooke. Every head turned. Derek stood slowly. He was tall, and in that small church he seemed to take up the entire aisle. His hands were at his sides. His voice was steady, but there was a tremor in it. The kind that comes not from weakness, but from a man saying something he's held inside for too long. I need to say something I've known for 2 years. Brooke's face collapsed. Derek, don't. He didn't look at her. He looked at me. Brooke told me during an argument. She said she heard your phone call that night, the night you were in the ER. She heard you ask your mother to come. He paused, swallowed. And she told Linda not to go. She said, don't go. The guests are about to arrive. The church went so quiet I could hear the candles hissing on their wicks. I have a daughter, Derek continued. Lily, she's 6 years old, and I think about what kind of world I'm teaching her to live in if I keep this quiet. Brooke grabbed his arm. Derek, shut up! No! Linda stepped forward, her voice cracking open now, the mask fully slipping. This is slander. You're all attacking me. Mom! I said it the way you'd say it to stop a child from running into traffic. Not angry, just clear. I didn't come here to attack you. I came here because for 8 years, you told everyone I was broken. I paused, let the silence hold. I'm standing here, in front of everyone, so they can see for themselves that I'm not. No one spoke. Not Linda, not Brooke, not a single person in that church. My mother's lip trembled, and I watched her reach for the only weapon she had left. Then my mother did the one thing I never expected. She didn't apologize. She didn't cry. She didn't fall to her knees or beg for forgiveness. That would have required her to admit she was wrong, and Linda Eisner, in 62 years of living, had never once admitted she was wrong. Instead, she turned to the congregation, slowly, deliberately, and she said, You're all going to believe her? Her voice was ice. After everything I've done for this church? I organized the bake sales. I ran the Christmas drive. I was here every single Sunday while she jabbed a finger in my direction without looking at me, was off doing God knows what in some town nobody's heard of. Nobody responded. Fine. She straightened her blouse, lifted her chin. Fine, if that's how it is. She turned to the first pew. Brooke, we're leaving. Brooke didn't move. For the first time in 38 years, Brooke Eisner Caldwell did not stand when her mother told her to stand. She sat with her hands in her lap and her eyes on the floor, and she didn't move. Linda looked around the room, at the faces she'd cultivated for years, the women she'd organized potlucks with, the men she'd sat beside at fundraisers. Not a single one of them stood to leave with her. She walked up the aisle alone. Her heels clicked against the stone floor. At the door, she stopped, turned, looked at me one last time. You always were ungrateful. Merry Christmas, Mom, I said. She pushed through the heavy wooden door. A gust of December air rushed in, cold and sharp and clean. Snow swirled across the threshold. And then the door closed behind her, and she was gone. The candles on the windowsills flickered from the draft, then steadied, then burned still. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Pastor Thomas walked to me. Not quickly, with the unhurried warmth of a man who'd been a shepherd for 30 years and knew that sometimes the most important thing is simply showing up. Welcome home, Paige, he said. and he shook my hand. Behind him, a woman stood from the fifth pew, Ruth Adler, 81 years old. I remembered her from childhood. She used to bring lemon bars to every church picnic and call all the kids sugar. She walked straight to me and put her arms around my shoulders. "I'm so sorry, honey. We believed her. We shouldn't have." I hugged her back. "You believed what you were told. That's not your fault." Others followed, one by one. Not everyone. Some stayed in their seats, uncertain, caught between the story they'd believed for years and the one standing in front of them. I didn't blame them. Belief is a heavy thing to rearrange in a single evening, but enough people came. Enough to fill the silence my mother had left behind. When the crowd thinned, I looked at the first pew. Brooke was still sitting there. Derek was beside her, not touching her, not comforting her, just sitting. I walked over, stood in front of my sister. She looked up. Her mascara had run. She looked smaller than I remembered. "I'm not going to pretend I'm okay with what you did," I said. "But I'm not going to hate you either. Not tonight." Brooke opened her mouth, her chin wrinkled. Her voice came out like something squeezed through a crack. "I'm sorry." "Saying it is the easy part," I told her. Then I turned and walked to the side exit of the church, into the cold, toward my car. I had somewhere to be. The hospital was 40 minutes away. I drove through empty streets with the radio off. The windshield wipers beat a rhythm against the snow. Steady, patient, relentless. The same rhythm my father had kept for 8 years. I arrived at Hartford County Medical at 10:15 on Christmas Eve. The parking lot was almost empty. The lobby smelled like floor cleaner and artificial pine. A nurse at the desk recognized me. I'd done a rotation here years ago. "Room 412, she said. "He's been awake all night. I think he's waiting for someone." I took the elevator, walked down the hall, stood outside room 412 and looked through the glass. Richard Eisner, 66 years old, lying in a hospital bed with an IV in his arm and a heart monitor beeping softly beside him. His hair was thinner than I remembered. His face was gray, but his eyes, open, alert, fixed on the door. Those were the same eyes that had looked at me across dinner tables for 26 years, trying to apologize without words. I pushed the door open, stepped inside. We looked at each other. For the first time in 8 years, my father and I were in the same room. No distance, no camera zoom, no rubber-banded album between us. I set the album on the edge of his bed. "I got your gift, Dad." His face crumpled, not dramatically. Slowly, the way a dam breaks when the water has been pressing against it for so long that it doesn't explode, it just gives way. I should have been braver, Paige. Every single day, I should have been braver. I took his hand. It was thin and warm. "You were there," I said. "In every back row, in every envelope, you were there." He cried. I'd never seen my father cry before, not once in my whole life. "I'm not ready to forgive everything," I told him, "but I'm here, and I'm not leaving." "That's enough," he said. "That's more than enough." We sat together for a long time. The heart monitor beeped. Snow hit the window in soft ticks. Somewhere down the hall, a nurse was humming Silent Night. Eventually, Richard spoke again, quietly, like a man sharing a secret he'd been rehearsing for months. "I need to tell you something else." I squeezed his hand. "Okay." 6 months ago, I contacted a lawyer, through Helen. Your mother doesn't know. I waited. "I filed for legal separation last month. My half of our assets, the savings, my pension, the investments, I've set up a trust, for you and for Lily." I stared at him. "Dad, it's not about the money. It's about her not being able to hold it over anyone anymore. Not me, not Helen, not that little girl." He looked at the ceiling. "Your Aunt Helen is my power of attorney if anything happens during the surgery. She'll handle everything." I didn't know what to say. This quiet man, this man who had spent 40 years nodding silently at the dinner table while his wife controlled the thermostat, the budget, the guest list, the narrative, had spent 6 months dismantling the cage from the inside. "Dad, that's huge," he almost smiled. "It's 8 years overdue." I didn't celebrate. This wasn't a victory. It was a 66-year-old man lying in a hospital bed the night before heart surgery, finally choosing to stop being afraid. There was grief in it. There was loss in it. There was the wreckage of a 40-year marriage that had been held together not by love, but by control. "That's not revenge, Dad," I said softly. "That's just, finally." He nodded, closed his eyes. His grip on my hand loosened, not letting go, just resting. I stayed until he fell asleep. The week after Christmas, things moved quickly. I don't say this with satisfaction. I'm telling you what happened because you deserve to know that actions have consequences, even when you've spent decades believing you're immune to them. The church board met on December 28th. Ruth Adler, the same woman who had hugged me in the aisle, sat on that board. So did 3 other people who had been in the sanctuary on Christmas Eve. They didn't vote to expel Linda. They didn't ban her. They simply, quietly, and unanimously asked her to step back from her organizational responsibilities for the foreseeable future. Ruth told Helen, "We think it's best for everyone." Linda called every aunt, uncle, and cousin in the Eisner family. She had a new script ready. Paige ambushed me in front of the whole church. She planned it to humiliate me. But this time, the script didn't land the way it used to. Helen had already sent photos of the album pages to the extended family. Richard's handwritten cards, the bank receipts, the photocopy of the letter. For the first time in 8 years, Linda's version of the story had competition. Not everyone believed me. I want to be honest about that. Some family members still sided with Linda. Habit is a powerful thing, but enough of them called Helen with the same question. Is this true? Did she really write that letter? The answer was always the same. Yes, and the original was in a pastor's office. Derek texted me on New Year's Day. Short, direct. "Give her time, but I want Lily to know her aunt." I read it twice, then typed back, "I'd like that." Linda was alone in the house on Maple Drive. No one locked her out. No one needed to. The doors were open. The rooms were just empty. December 26th, 6:30 a.m. I sat in the surgical waiting room at Hartford County Medical with a paper cup of coffee I hadn't touched. Helen sat beside me, knitting something. A scarf, I think. The needles clicking softly. She always needed her hands busy when she was afraid. I was wearing my scrubs. Not because I was working, but because they were the only clothes that felt right. I'd spent 10 years in these clothes, standing on the other side of operating room doors, telling families to breathe, to wait, to trust the team. Now I was the family. Now I was the one being told to breathe. The surgery was scheduled for 4 hours, coronary artery bypass. The surgeon, Dr. Reeves, had explained the risks the night before, and I had nodded along, understanding every clinical word and feeling none of the clinical calm. Hour 1. Helen knitted. Hour 2. I paced. Hour 3. I sat down and stared at the scuff marks on the floor and thought about all the years I had missed. Birthday dinners I was never invited to. Sunday phone calls that never came. A father who drove 4 hours to sit in the back row of an auditorium and then drove 4 hours home without saying a word. Hour 3 and 47 minutes. Dr. Reeves walked through the double doors, mask around his chin. Surgery went well. He's strong. He'll be in recovery within the hour. Helen dropped a stitch. She didn't care. She grabbed my arm and laughed the way people laugh when they've been holding their breath for too long. I cried. And for the first time in 8 years, I didn't cry alone. When Richard opened his eyes in recovery, I was there, sitting in the chair by the window, the chair that had been empty the last time I woke up from surgery. He saw me, smiled. "You're still here." "I'm still here, Dad." 1 week later, I drove to Aunt Helen's house to pick up a casserole she'd made for Richard's homecoming. That's what she told me anyway. I think she just wanted me in the same room as Lily again. The girl was sitting at Helen's kitchen table, coloring. She looked up when I walked in and her whole face changed, not excitement exactly, but recognition, like she'd been waiting. "Hi, Aunt Paige." "Hi, Lily." She went back to coloring. I sat across from her and watched her work. Tongue between her teeth, crayon gripped tight. completely absorbed. After a few minutes, she folded her paper in half, pressed the crease with her palm, and slid it across the table to me. I opened it. 2 figures drawn in crayon. One tall, one small. Holding hands. The tall one had brown hair and a blue jacket. My peacoat, I realized. The small one had yellow hair and a red bow. Underneath, in the careful, oversized letters of a child learning to write, Aunt Paige plus me. My throat closed. Lily, did Grandpa tell you about me? She nodded, matter of fact, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Grandpa shows me your picture every night before bed. He says you're the bravest person he knows. I looked at the drawing. Then I looked at Helen, who was standing in the doorway wiping her eyes with a dish towel. 8 years. I'd spent 8 years believing I'd been erased. That I existed nowhere in my family's memory. That I'd been written out of the story so completely that no one even remembered there was a story to tell. But in a 6-year-old girl's bedroom, a girl I'd never met, there was a picture of me on the wall. I was never truly alone. I just didn't know it yet. People ask me that question. You know the one. Every time I tell this story, someone asks, "Did you forgive your mother?" Here's my answer, and I need you to sit with it, because it's not the neat, ribbon-tied ending people want. Forgiveness isn't a gift you give someone who hurt you. It's a decision you make so the hurt stops living rent-free in your chest. And I'm not there yet. I might never be. And that is okay. I haven't spoken to Linda since Christmas Eve. She hasn't called, she hasn't written, she hasn't shown up at my door with an apology or a casserole or a Bible verse about prodigal daughters. The silence between us used to feel like a wound. Now it feels like a wall I built on purpose. And I'm not tearing it down until someone gives me a reason to. With Brooke, I'm open. But open has conditions. I told Helen to pass along a message. I'll talk to your niece when she's ready to be honest. Not before. I don't need her apology. I need her to change. No response yet. Maybe there won't be. Maybe there will be. I can live with either. With my father, we're building. Slowly. 1 phone call a week. 1 visit a month. He comes to my apartment, and I make him soup, and he sits on my couch and watches me work on patient charts and doesn't say much. Sometimes he falls asleep. Sometimes we talk. It's not perfect. It's not fixed. But it's real. And real is more than I've had in a very long time. I decided something that night in the church. Something I carry with me every single day now. Blood doesn't override behavior. I decide who gets access to my life. I decide who earns the chair at my table. And I set it for myself first. This Christmas was different. I didn't sign up for the overnight shift. For the first time in 8 years, I wasn't at the clinic on December 25th. I was home. My apartment still has the creaky stairs and the drafty windows. But the table, the small kitchen table where I used to eat cereal alone at 7 a.m., had 3 extra chairs pulled up to it. Richard sat on the couch. He's thinner now, and slower. But his color is good, and his doctor says the bypass is holding. He was helping Lily hang a paper snowflake on the tree, my tree, which this year was 5 feet tall and had more ornaments than branches. Helen was in the kitchen, doing what Helen always does, feeding people. The whole apartment smelled like garlic and rosemary and something chocolate cooling on the counter. Derek had brought Lily that morning. He and Brooke are separated now. That's not my story to tell, and I won't pretend to know all the reasons. But he stood in my doorway, handed me a bag of Lily's things, and said, "Thank you for letting her be here." I said, "Thank you for bringing her." Brooke sent a card, 2 words inside. "I'm sorry. I don't know if that's a beginning or an ending. I don't know if she means it the way it needs to be meant. But I put the card on my windowsill, next to a photo of my father at my graduation, printed from the album, framed in a $5 frame from the pharmacy. Lily sat on the floor, drawing. She draws constantly now. Every picture has 2 people holding hands. I looked around the room, small, warm, imperfect, full. Last Christmas, a little girl knocked on my door holding a book. This Christmas, she's sitting on my living room floor, drawing pictures of the 2 of us. Some stories don't have neat endings, but this one has a beginning. And that's enough. If you're still here, and I hope you are, I want to say something directly to you, not as a character in a story, as a person. If you recognized any of this, the favoritism, the gaslighting, the way a parent can smile for the room while gutting you behind closed doors, I want you to know something. Walking away isn't giving up. Walking away is sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do. I know because I did it at 26, alone, in a hospital gown, and it saved my life. And if there's someone who's been loving you from the back row, someone you didn't know was there, don't be too proud to let them in when they finally step forward. My father isn't perfect. He was quiet when he should have been loud. He was careful when he should have been reckless, but he showed up, in every way he could, and when it mattered most, he made sure I knew. You deserve a seat at your own table, not the back row, not the leftover chair, not the folding seat they pull out of the garage when they've already set the places for everyone else. The seat you built, the seat you earned, the seat you set for yourself. My name is Paige Eisner. I'm 34 years old. I'm a nurse practitioner. I have a cat named Olive, an apartment with drafty windows, and a niece who draws pictures of us every single day. This was my story. Thank you for listening. If this story stayed with you, I'd love to hear yours. Comment below. Have you ever had to walk away from family to find peace? Or did someone love you from the back row without you knowing? Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and check the description for more stories like this one. Merry Christmas wherever you are, whenever you're watching this.